Hello, and welcome back to the Rebel Entrepreneur, where I am interviewing some really inspiring entrepreneurs who are sharing vulnerably with us their true stories. We're getting kind of like a behind the scenes look like what it's really like to be an entrepreneur, and they're sharing struggles and successes. I think it's important to get that big picture. So I'm GLuskin, and today we have an awesome guest with us. It's Shannon Gronich. Hello, Shannon, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So Shannon, if you're not familiar with her work, she is the author of Media Magic, and she's also known as having a $1 million Rolodex, and she's helped her clients and herself get like millions of dollars in free press over the years. She's awesome. She's also local, so we both live on the Space Coast of Florida, beautiful, sunny Florida, on the East Coast, and she's just awesome. We actually met to have coffee a few weeks ago, and she told me her story, and it was so good. I got like goosebumps. I was like, "Oh, you have to share this on the Rebel Entrepreneur," and she agreed. And she's got like a past Rebel Entrepreneur story and a present Rebel Entrepreneur story. So I'm like, yay! So welcome.
Thank you.
So before we get into your stories, it's for those that aren't really familiar with your work or haven't worked with you before, I want to tell a little bit about what you do.
Yes, I've always been passionate about building community and connecting people. And so I currently do events called the Business Acceleration Summit, where we bring together individuals to mastermind, get instant feedback and resources, and really support that community. Because so many times, whether it be business and parenting and even our personal growth or spiritual growth, I found that that community is such a powerful element. And so I do that through events.
Absolutely. I agree, because especially being an entrepreneur or even a parent, both, I could say that sometimes it feels like you're going at it alone. Like, oh, what am I doing? I'm out here on this island by myself. But then when you get into that community, you realize, no, these other people have the exact same problems that I do. Right. And not necessarily everyone talks about it publicly, but behind the scenes, you're like, oh, you get me. Really nice feeling.
Yeah. And it also, I found that sometimes I might be searching for something or wanting feedback. And I found that when I surround myself with others, it's like there's these little angels that'll be giving me answers or input or feedback that I needed right at that perfect time. So it really speeds things up in my life too. It seems like there's a lot of velocity that happens.
That's true. That's true. It seems like the right people kind of show up for you when you need them, but you have to also do the work and put yourself in the place.
Yeah, you have to get out there.
Those connections, like if you're sitting at home waiting for the right person to show up, not so much. But when you get out there in the community, all of a sudden the right people start. Yeah, I see that too. It's really cool. So you told me over our coffee your really cool story, because we both have like a similar, some similarities in our story. We both started companies that grew really fast. They hit the multi-million-dollar revenue mark, which I think, especially for women, I think the statistic is like only 3% of women ever hit that revenue mark. So it was kind of a big deal. And we both did that, but then we both had things happen in our business where we had to close the business. And so I thought that was kind of cool, that not cool, but like over that, there's like, wow, you get me. Like, who else has that same story? Not a lot of people. And also we both had struggle within that story, but then the outcome afterwards was like kind of a nice thing. So I thought that was cool that we connected on that. But your story is like really cool.
Oh, I liked yours too. It definitely, and what was interesting, and I know when I started the business, I was like, this is my life purpose.
Yeah.
This is what I'm here to do, and everything. And it was at that time being, and after running it for about 10 years, there was not only a major shift in the economy, which impacted, my clients and members, but also a major shift in my health. And I remember so many lessons, Dawn. I mean, one was that every book has an ending, it's like every chapter has, there's a beginning of a new chapter, but also the willingness to let go, because I was so attached to this story that I actually had held, even when I was struggling, I didn't reach out to community. I didn't let anybody know. When I finally came out, it was like, I had people upset that I didn't share. I was really embarrassed. I had a lot of things going on as I was trying to keep it together. So do you want me to share kind of what
Yeah, definitely.
So and I tried to keep it going for months, and it was so beautiful because I had people that believed in the vision, that stood there by me, that, many of them worked without even getting paid, and they wanted to keep it going, but it was like the universe was going, okay, this chapter is going to close. And after it closed, I ended up doing every New Year, and from like Christmas to New Year, I do this intentional life kind of internal process. And I happened to go for 2 days with a friend, and I said, this year I'm going to do a pilgrimage as if it was my last year, my year to live. I had a last year to live. What would I do? And so from that, I said, oh gosh, I want to do a journey with my kids. And I started making a list of things, and it was really interesting, the priorities and how they shifted in my life, but I was still struggling financially. And I remember hearing this tape going, well, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I'm like, well, this is about creating remarkable moments. And how do you become unstoppable? And how do you live those moments now without waiting for those excuses? And so the story I shared with you is my children. One of them was this trip with my children. And as it kept getting, I scheduled a trip across country with them, and I was trying to sell things. I was trying to get clients, but it wasn't moving as quickly. And my son in the back of the car started talking about the trip. So excited. My heart almost crushed because I was toying. Am I going to do this? Am I not going to do this? So I ended up reaching out to my community. Finally, I said, let me reach out to my community. And the first person said, quoted something in the Bible. And this was a Zen teacher. A Zen teacher said, we're always taking care of the birds. Every creature is always taken care of. And he goes, just know that whatever you decide, you're going to be taken care of. The second person was a coach who said, people will follow you via video. And I'm thinking, who would want to watch me via video? And she said, well, people love these stories. And again, I was like, well, how's that going to make money? Right. But all of these pieces came together. And then I went to another spiritual teacher, and she said, well, I love what you're doing. Why don't you put up a PayPal button and I'll donate? And that was like okay, I'm not getting out of this. So making that declaration to my community of this is what I want, and having people show up behind me to help me do this. So what happened was I left Florida with less than $100 in my pocket, no credit card, and 2 young children to travel across country. We were going to a reunion, and it was, Dawn, so life-changing. Not only the kids coming together, we stopped and we interviewed individuals along the way, and we asked them, what would you do if you had a year to live?
That's so cool.
And what's stopping you right now from doing it? Like how can you do this right now? So we wanted to inspire people with that, and then also with health. So the whole time I'm juicing, I'm doing yoga, I'm, getting in this mindset of, even though we're told we have to have money to do certain things, how do I build my inner wealth without making it about my bank account?
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we left on the trip. Lots of miracles happened. We had people, donating along the way, calling along the way, clients coming in. But the biggest breakthrough was when I got to another community, and I sat down, and my publisher was there, and I still was showing up and not really letting anybody know. And I drove a Mercedes at the time. So Dawn, what's the first thing you think of with the Mercedes?
Right. Oh, she's got money.
Yeah, well, and I, one of the big lessons I learned was all the judgment I had around money and people. So that was a big learning lesson of thinking certain things about people based upon what they wear or what they drive. But when I got there, I ended up meeting with a publisher of one of the books I did. And she was the first person I shared the story with. And she was in tears and she was laughing. And that whole thing that you teach, Dawn, about vulnerability and authenticity, it was the biggest connection that we'd ever had. Like, we never connected, and it was so beautiful. And I ended up sharing with somebody else, and I ended up leaving there with a $15,000 contract. And I remember saying to him, did you not hear me? I just lost everything. And I came here with nothing. And he's like, no, I love you. I know you. I'm glad that you lost everything, because now you can help me. So, we called it the Dare to Live Challenge. And, what I would like to leave people with, and what kind of inspired me, was just knowing that we are not how much is in our bank account. And really, when we are vulnerable and we do reach out to our community, there are so many gifts that we have, and that we're so supported. I learned at a deeper level that even when I'm questioning certain things, that we are so taken care of on so many levels. But it does involve reaching out and being vulnerable and letting people know at that level, even when it's scary.
Absolutely. I love so many things about that story. So I get that whole part about, whereas like my business failed, and I use the word fail because it didn't really fail, it just ended and something else began. But in our minds, I'm a failure. No one's going to want to work with me anymore. Like you attach to these things, like, I was a successful CEO and like, whatever media coverage. And like, so we have all these ideas in our head that we're attached to. So the aftermath is something that, when you get attached to something, it becomes part of your identity. And then the aftermath is I'm not worthy anymore. And I don't want to tell anyone, they're going to judge me. They're not going to like me. So I went through that whole thing too, with my business, and had the same kind of epiphany once I started sharing and getting that support. And it's so beautiful, because we all think they're going to judge me, but they're not. They're going to support you. They're going to feel, because they're going to see something of their story inside yours. Maybe they didn't have $1 million business or whatever, but something in their life, they're going to see your humanness as their own reflection. And that's where the connection comes in. And that's why it's so powerful. But the other thing I love was the Zen teacher. And he said, everything is taken care of. And how like scary that must be. Like I have $100. I'm going to get in the car with my kids and everything's going to be taken care of. Like, just to have that kind of faith is pretty remarkable.
It was
what happened.
Yeah, it was really, I remember, and I didn't want my kids to feel fear. So that was a big part of it. Like I was, but our kids can sense everything, yes, which is really interesting, as much as we try to hide it and keep it together. Cause I interviewed them and you can still see it. My son was like, I'm a little nervous. And what if we have to go to school somewhere else?
We'll never make it back home. Like, yeah.
But they, and I was scared. There was a lot of times where I was scared. I remember pulling into that event that I told you about. And it was funny because I had actually judged people in the past who showed up in my same situation. And it's so weird. I used to say, how can they come here with no money? Like they're sleeping in their cars, and not that we ever slept in cars, but just that judgment. And here I got put in the same situation to show up where I didn't have anything. And it was amazing how like my kids went there and they started sharing their business ideas, and people were donating money. They actually got a job while they were there. And they're like, Mom, we got jobs. And it involved feeding them. And so it was just, everything worked out beyond what I would have ever imagined. If you get a chance to watch the videos, we've got a Dare to Live Facebook page. And it's so beautiful to hear other people's stories, but also just follow this journey. I had people calling me, say, I quit my job. Wow. I ended my relationship. Some of it I was like, do this at your own risk, kind of think it through.
Right. You can't be responsible. Yeah.
But where do we live with these beliefs that we can't do something?
Yeah.
Like you have to have this to have that. That was the big breakthrough. That's like, if this happens, then this can happen. And that, I think that is becoming more and more an illusion right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I haven't seen the videos yet either, but I would like to check them out. So I'll post the link in the rebelentrepreneur.biz so everyone can go check them out, because I want to see them too. But what else? The other thing I love about your story is it just shows that when you do open up to community, what can happen. Like you said in the beginning, you were afraid to tell anybody, but then all these people supported you. You got this like amazing contract, and your kids got this amazing experience. And then the question that you ask about having only a year to live, that question's like golden, because there's I guess hospice nurses, I've seen a study where they ask, when you are caring for people on their deathbeds, and you ask them, they talk to these people in their last days, and the question comes up, is there anything you would do differently in your life looking back, and they always say the same thing. It's always, I wish I had spent less time working. I wish I had spent more time with friends and family. And then the other one is, I wish I had done that thing I always wanted to do, right? So their whole life, and we all have that thing I always wanted to do. But, you know, are you going to do it now, or are you going to miss out on the opportunity? Because we never know how long our life's going to be. So that's such a good question. And the fact that you asked that question and people like took off and like quit their jobs and stuff is pretty remarkable. So I love it. And this all was born out of your quote unquote failed business. So like, so beautiful. What happened? It's out of failure. I love that.
Yeah. So the other thing is that we also I started doing retreats and taking people. We would do what I call, it's not the best name, but a death meditation. And this process is about 45 minutes, but it's so eye-opening how much as an entrepreneur or as a mom or as an individual, I was getting stuck in what I think I should do, and my priorities would get out of whack.
Yeah.
And so just that, whether it be that question or that process, and just looking at it, or just, you know, and I talked to a productivity coach, and she goes, well, it doesn't have to be as if things are ending. Just what if you only had a certain amount of time to accomplish what you wanted? And what would you start saying no to? Right. What would you start saying yes to?
Yeah.
You know, what would you tolerate or not tolerate?
Yeah. That's true. I think the death part though gives people that extra little bit, because that's our big, like, that's our biggest, greatest fear is dying. Like as a human species, every other fear we have goes back to the fear of dying. So it's like that biggest fear, like it's coming. Yeah. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's powerful. That is one of my favorite exercises to do at retreats, because I've had people come out and go, I got to write my book, and they literally leave there, and another person's, you know, this isn't in order, and so it really gets us clear on what do we need to be doing right now. I know when I've done it, I see where I create chaos around, and not, you know, I have to redirect my priorities around my family. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, I'll have to talk later. I want to hear about the meditation, but I know we probably don't have enough time to go through the whole thing, but I'll share it with you guys at some other point. Yeah. But I did want to hear about your current situation. So this story happened several years ago.
Yes.
But now you have your new business and you're doing your events, and you are a mom of 3 kids. So tell us what that's like running a business at home with your kids. That's kind of rebellious too.
Yeah. When I first saw that your summit, I was like, oh, this is so perfect. I do feel like a rebel entrepreneur, because, and it was still, you know, a long, dark night of the soul, kind of figuring out who am I, the rebirthing. And so I got remarried, had another kid, and still feel like I've been coming out of that. And it definitely is a rebel, because when you're working at home, I have a toddler, you know, people are saying, put him in daycare. You've got to, there's all these shoulds to be successful that we're told. And even that I've taught as a coach, and I'm really questioning that. But when you brought up rebel entrepreneur, I'm thinking there's so much right now in my life where I have a toddler, and I'm like, I want to spend time with my toddler. I want to make sure I can teach him things that I didn't get to do with my other kids in daycare, and doing it. And it's not always easy, but it is the best, and it is so rewarding. And I feel like the gifts that show up are beyond words. It's worth the challenge, it's worth the juggles, it's worth the joys, and it's really getting clear on what I wanted. Like, what type of life did I want to create? And it's really against the mainstream, right? I mean, working from home with kids and doing events. So I started doing events again, which is a lot, you know, dealing with a lot of moving parts and pieces and people coming in town and out of town. So when I think of rebel entrepreneur, I guess the biggest thing is chasing a toddler around while building a business at home.
No, I get it, because I have 2 children. My youngest is 4, so she's just barely out of that toddler phase, but I get it. And I started my first business with my 6-month-old on my lap. So I get it. And it's not easy. Like, just being an entrepreneur in and of itself alone, that's hard enough. Like, you know, there's no like guidebook, but then having kids too, but there's a gift in that. Like you said, you know, I always call them tiny gurus. They have so much to teach us. They're like a reflection of ourselves, and they teach us and they inspire us. It's like, I'm going to stay up to midnight and get this done, because, you know, I got these mouths to feed and I want to show them like what's possible. And, you know, so there's that element too, but then there's also the chasing and like, the chaos. And so how do you manage it all? Like, what's your strategy, or how does that look?
So the one thing is that definitely getting clear on what my priorities are, because part of why I think my other company came to a close is I knew the talk and I did live it partially, but I didn't always walk the talk. Yeah. So really doing the best I can to keep my in the morning, wake up, okay, what do I need to do with my kids today? Like what do I need to do with my husband today? What are those priorities?
Yeah.
And trying to eat healthy, be healthy. But I have, I've always been big on having a part-time assistant. Somebody that I work better in teams. One of my mentors said, even if you hire somebody at $10 an hour for 10 hours a week, it'll change your life. So when I ended up losing everything, that was probably one of the most challenging parts, was in there doing everything, which I'm still, being willing to do everything, I think, is a part of it, but also having that person that will help. So managing it all I have, a part-time assistant, and I'm building community, seeing what I can do to collaborate with others to help them, and really creating momentum with community instead of doing it on my own, I guess.
Right. And that's
also being parenting too, having other people help with the kids, doing events together.
It takes a village to raise children and to raise a business.
Yes.
Much help as we can get. And I've seen you actually bring your children to events, right? Like,
I do.
Pictures of your adorable little son at some of the events. And how was that? I mean, that's awesome. Like, so you just integrate it all together.
Yes. Yeah. He's still, I'm like, do I say this on here? I'm still breastfeeding. So, so some events, if I'm on stage, I can't have him in the same room. That part is still that connection. If I hear him cry, I'm like, oh, but yeah, I definitely have brought him to a lot of events. He's learned how to be quiet when there's meetings. He's learned how to, he's learned certain behaviors. My teens have actually helped me with all of my events, retreats. So they're learning levels of business and connection, and it just lights me up when they come home from being around people like you, Dawn. I mean, when they come home and they share what gifts they got and what they contributed, it just makes it all worth it.
Yeah, I can only imagine like how that's going to show up, or probably already showing up in their lives now. And as they get older and start to build their career, it's just like, what they'll be able to accomplish, to be surrounded by that, because I didn't start like the trainings and the masterminding until like later in life, but I could just imagine like as a teenager or a toddler to be exposed to that your whole life. Like, you're just gaining so much. It's cool.
Yeah, they definitely
like little world changers in the making. I love it.
Yeah, they both firewalked at the age of 5. I used to be big into firewalking, and that was a way of transformation. And so they, it's definitely, I think, and that's another thing, is really picking that we can decide what we want to do in our life. So when I align with certain organizations, I make sure it fits into my lifestyle. Yeah. Do they welcome family? Mm-hmm. How can this, I try not to separate friendship and business. And I know that's against the norm, but to me, if I'm doing business with somebody, I really want to do business with somebody I love.
Rebel entrepreneur, right? It's like, break the rules, right? If it feels right, I think that's like the biggest thing to me. If it feels right to you, just because somebody else said that's, what do they know? It's your life. It's your business. Which kind of brings me to my next question, because I'm looking at the time and I know we're just have a few more minutes left here. But one of the inspirations behind doing the Rebel Entrepreneur was, that there's so much business advice going around out there, and you often see these like 10-step, follow my 10 steps and you'll make millions of dollars programs, and I know lots of people have told me, clients and friends who have, invested like so much money in these coaching programs, and they don't get the results they thought they were going to get. And, I think it's because there's a missing element. Like you bring something to the table, like you as an individual, that these 10 steps may or may not apply to, right? So I think we have to infuse ourselves into our business. We have to infuse our personality, our experience, and everything else. So that's why some of these 10 steps programs don't work, because they don't address that part of it. So in that vein, I've been asking people just to kind of drive the point home that not all business advice is created equal. What I've been asking everyone is there like some advice that you've gotten that on the surface was actually like really sound, solid business advice, but for whatever reason, when you applied it to your situation, it wasn't so good? Can you think of?
I probably have a laundry list of those, but and I'm sure it had a lot to do with me. But yeah, there's been a couple that come to mind. I mean, I've actually raised capital. I've helped people raise capital, and I know one of the things that I was told was that when I was raising capital, there was a certain term sheet that should only be 12 months, and it was really one of the worst. And this was, people have raised tons of money. It seemed like sound advice. I'd seen other people do it. And then when it came time, and I actually met another expert who had raised millions and millions and millions of dollars, they shared that, no, it needs to be at least 3 to 5 years. Well, when the 12 months came up, it was like, here I was scrambling to try to fulfill my contract, and it put so much pressure on my company that it was really difficult. So I learned that, and at the time my gut was like, gosh, this seems really short.
Right.
I didn't even follow my gut on what I thought was right. I was just like, oh, well, this is what they do. This is what they've done. Last year I had a similar thing with hiring somebody on a funnel project, and they had helped tons of people make lots of money, and followed the process, did everything on a timeline, on a schedule. And I think I got like $200 after 6 months. And I was like, okay, I'm not fitting in the box. And I even did law of attraction work. And I've got bits and pieces. I mean, some of it, I think that my heart was feeling in a box. Like I had to, she was sharing with me, stay laser focused, only talk about marketing. Don't talk about other things. And I think that was probably an undercurrent within me, that while I was doing it, like, gosh, I want to share about community, or I want to share about, parenting. And so
yourself into the marketing.
Yes. So I think that was a big piece of why that wasn't working, but it worked for hundreds of other people.
Right. So it probably, you're like, well, what am I doing wrong? But I think that the takeaway from that is definitely look to the experts for advice. They've walked the path, they're successful for a reason, but take their advice with a grain of salt. And you have to also listen to your gut. So your gut was telling you, no, something's not right. And you didn't listen to that, and you took the advice. And I've been in the same boat. We've all done it. So you got to kind of like have the balance. Okay, here's what the experts say, but here's what my gut's saying. Where do we meet? Where's like the halfway point, or where can we, Yeah. So that's very important. But I know we're running out of time, but I so appreciate you coming on here today. And I want everyone to know where they can find you on social media and about your free gift that you're giving away.
Oh, yes. I was sharing the 7 steps. When I contributed to the book with the publisher, it was called Cash Crash to Conscious Creations, because I went from single mom struggling to creating this. So I'm giving away my 7 steps to conscious creations. If you go to consciouslivingpublishing.com, you can download the 7 steps. And it's just how I went from having nothing to creating, this big business and doing it for the community.
Awesome. And then I'll also have the link in the rebelentrepreneur.biz. If you click on Shannon's beautiful face, it'll take you to her page, and you can click on the link there, and I'll put your social media too, so everyone can follow you. And if you're on the Space Coast, come see us, especially come to one of Shannon's events. She puts on really great events.
And I want to acknowledge you. Thank you so much, because I've went back into a little bit of hiding after this coach I mentioned with the staying focused, and you've really inspired me to be authentic and share things. So you're a rock star. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Shannon. It's been joyful talking to you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.